Hello and welcome to Corporate Culture, your podcast for cooperation, conflict, and culture at work. Today, I speak with Ruslan Sharipov. Ruslan is an international lawyer from Russia who worked at the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg since the start of the war in Ukraine. And I am very interested in his perspectives on intercultural cooperation in times of war, his experiences working in international organizations, and his thoughts about Russian culture at work. Welcome and thank you for joining, Ruslan.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me, Paul.
Ruslan, maybe you can give us a very short summary of your life so far. Where were you born and raised? Where did you study? What were your professional stages?
In short, I was born and raised in a very small town in the Republic of Bashkortostan, and then I went to study at the Kazan Federal University in the Republic of Tatarstan, which is a neighboring republic to Bashkortostan. But these are two Muslim republics inside of I would say Russia. So there I studied for 6 years, bachelor and master degrees, and then I got a Fulbright scholarship and went to study in the US at the University of Notre Dame, and from there I went to The Hague, where I interned at the residual mechanism of criminal tribunals. There I stayed for half of the year, and then got a fellowship at the University of Stockholm. And inside of this fellowship, I also had a fellowship at the University of Graz in Austria. Then I got an offer from the European Court of Human Rights, and I went to Strasbourg to work there. And I stayed at the court for 2 years since until 2023, September 2023. Now I'm consulting some NGOs on human rights.
Quite a contrast, right? So you spent the first, I think, 20 or even more years only in Russia, and then you were traveling all around the world, basically. United States, Europe, many different countries. Very interesting life so far.
Yeah, I would say so.
I'm especially interested in the situation when you joined the Court of Human Rights, because you joined, I think, in 2020, right? In 2021?
2021,
in 2021. But as I remember, that was before the war in Ukraine started, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
How was it when you joined there? What were your tasks? What was the work of this Russian division in the European Court? What were your jobs there?
Yeah, I think at that time when I joined the court, we had about 40 lawyers working on cases against Russia. And at that time I was pretty motivated and wanted to get new experience, make new friends and everything. And actually the court and the Council of Europe itself, they're perfect places for that, because there were people from 47 different countries all over the Europe, and you can actually meet really a person from any of these countries during the lunch or during the break and talk to them. But yeah, we were involved, especially, talking about myself as a assistant lawyer. I was involved in the first half of the year in examining and analyzing cases, or I would say not cases, even the incoming mail from Russia, from the citizens of Russia, people who live in Russia, which complained about some alleged violations by the Russian Federation of their rights.
The European Court of Human Rights, just maybe to explain, is a court where individuals can complain about human rights violations, right?
Yeah, right. There is some procedure, some criteria we have to check before we accept their complaints. So yeah, and we had to check these things, and then we had to check some other criteria, which are, it would be difficult to, I think, explain it in short right now, but yeah, it's possible to check them online on the website of the court. They're pretty clear, but it's just like a matter of some procedural things to do for the court. So, and as assistant lawyers, we're checking these criteria, and if a person meets all of them, we accept his case for examining by the court, and then the case goes to lawyers, and they start working on them. But then I was supposed to get deeper to the cases, and I did, but the war happened, and everything changed.
Yeah. Maybe let's stay for a second in the time before the war in Ukraine. So you said there are, I think, 47 countries at the time when you joined?
Yeah, right. At the time I joined, yeah.
And every country has its own section with lawyers who are taking care of the cases in these countries, right?
It depends. If we're talking about small countries, they might be merged into one division. So, for example, I think there is one division for Luxembourg. I think maybe Andorra, Belgium, or something like that. So there are countries which don't need a lot of lawyers.
Okay.
And they have like common divisions for that. But I would say that there are lawyers and judges from at least 47 countries.
So it's a very multicultural environment, and I find it very interesting, especially when it comes to working together with the different countries. Did you have a lot of contact with people, lawyers from the other sections, or where did you connect?
Yeah, I should acknowledge first that most of the time, lawyers, especially in this kind of, I would say, big divisions as the Russian one or the Turkish one, and most of the time lawyers work in their like respective offices, and they don't have actually much time to cooperate and interact with lawyers from other divisions concerning work. But then we also have this. I have said that we have lunches and breaks, and yeah. So we have this like opportunity to talk and to interact during this kind of breaks. Yeah, and also when I joined, we had this kind of like preliminary session for all incoming lawyers. And most of them were young lawyers as myself, so we had a WhatsApp chat, and then we went out together and traveled somewhere nearby also together. So we had the chance to get know each other better during this time. So, and we stayed in touch until almost the end of my contract. Now we're also in touch, but we just don't have much time, I would say, to talk and to meet, because in the court you had more time for more chances to meet during the day, I would say.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. You said there are a lot of different cultures, a lot of different divisions. Everybody's working on its own cases. Before the war, did you feel that there were a lot of cultural conflicts or big cultural differences or anything for you from your Russian perspective at the court?
So before the war, I had worked there for 6 months, I think, since September 2021. And I wouldn't say that I saw much of a lot of conflicts, but yeah, I should also say that there are in the court, except these country divisions, there are, I think, 2 or 3 divisions which are called conflict units. For example, Armenian and Azerbaijani conflict unit, Ukrainian-Russian conflict unit, and I think Georgia, maybe a Georgia-Russia conflict unit as well. So, and these conflict units, they deal with the cases, as you can imagine, from the conflict times. So, and the Ukrainian-Russian conflict unit, I don't know exactly when it was founded, but I think it could be the situation, the annexation of Crimea. But I would say that in this conflict units, people might feel some tensions, I would say, but at the same time, I think lawyers working at the court, which went through the education and then work experience, they are quite respectful, friendly, polite. They can accept the differences. They can accept that there is politics, and they understand that they are lawyers and they deal with what they have to work on. So, yeah, I wouldn't say that I really saw any conflicts or open conflicts before the war started, and even after, actually.
Okay. And in these conflict units, for example, the Ukrainian-Russian conflict unit, there were Ukrainian lawyers and Russian lawyers who had to work together, or how did they cooperate?
Unfortunately, there were not many Russian lawyers. Most of the lawyers were from Ukraine. Yeah, and they had to cooperate. And I mean, I haven't worked in this division, and I cannot say that they had some difficulties in cooperation and interaction. I wouldn't say that there were tensions, but just like, you know, we were just very sorry that it happened in Ukraine, and we couldn't do much. But yeah.
That's interesting that like in this frame of the European Court, it's kind of the conflict is kind of professionalized, you could say, right? That the people, they know what's going on. They have to work in these conflicts. They have to check like human rights violations, stuff like that in the conflicts. And they know about a lot of stuff. They probably know a lot more than normal people do. And still you describe it as very professional, very polite, very collegial, let's say, environment.
Yeah, correct. I think, of course, it depends on a person. There could be lawyers and people at the court whose like emotional state is still prevails, and they can say some like offensive words or something, or just show their attitude against somebody from another country. But I wouldn't say that there are many people like that. Still, this professionalism, I think, goes up front.
Can you describe us the concrete changes at the court when the war in Ukraine started?
The Committee of Ministers, this political body of the Council of Europe, they started these topics about the expulsion of Russia from the Council of Europe, and they decided that they need to expel Russia from the Council of Europe. So on March 16, 2022, Russia was expelled from the Council of Europe, and on 16th of September the same year, the Russian Federation officially ceased to be a member of the Council of Europe. So after that date, any violations happened in Russia, people could not complain about that and go to the court, for example. So so when the Committee of Ministers decided to expel Russia in March it was clear for us that our future was not that bright, and in May we were informed that our contracts will not be renewed anymore, and of course our motivation decreased 100 times. That especially, I mean, at least for me, when I just started getting deeper into cases and drafting judgments and decisions against Russia. And then I was informed that, okay, your contract and your stay here is limited, so you will go and have to find something else in these times in Europe or whatever. And what was the reason not to renew our contract is our citizenship. It was official reason for the Council of Europe not to renew. So my colleagues and myself, we saw this decision as unfair, and my colleagues went and appealed against this decision to the administrative tribunal at the Council of Europe, but the tribunal dismissed all our claims. So, and our contracts finished and were not renewed anymore. So yeah, and the most important part of that was our and I leave aside all the emotions and our attitude towards our colleagues from the Ukrainian unit. But yeah, the main thing was for us that we were not motivated anymore to work at the court. We saw that the court still kept dealing with the cases against Russia, despite the expulsion. Russia had to implement the judgments and decisions adopted against it.
You said before you want to leave the emotions aside and everything, but actually I would like to talk a bit more about that, because it's a very weird situation, let's say, that you work in a section that represent a country, or that works for cases of a country that was expulsed. So you're kind of half already expulsed, but you're still in the system, I think, for almost 1.5 years or so, right? That you continued working, even though you knew that Russia is not part of the Council of Europe, that your section or your work will be terminated. How did that feel? Like, what changed also maybe with your colleagues of your section, with the colleagues of other sections? How did the working climate change inside the European Court of Human Rights?
I think it didn't change for my colleagues from other divisions, except Ukrainians. They still worked on their cases, but they felt sorry, of course, for Ukrainians and for us, that the war happened, and then that our contracts are not renewed. And as for changes, as I said, the most important change for me and for my colleagues in the Russian division was demotivation. Nobody knew what to expect, how to, I would say, lead their lives afterwards. For example, my male colleagues, they didn't want to go back to Russia after the mobilization started in Russia, and there was a threat of going to the war. Yeah, and but as for the climate inside the division, I would say, yeah, people were like just working, they closing doors and everything, and just working on their cases, trying to do their work during the day, then go back to their families, or going back just home, and then doing these things again. And during this time, I assume that people try to look for other jobs somewhere in Europe. I think most of them. Yeah, but at that time we were not sure how we could stay in Europe, because after our contract terminates, we have to give back our residence cards. So yeah, but fortunately we managed to do all of this and stay in Europe. But there were more conflicts inside the unit. I mean, most of them, the base for those conflicts was the emotional state of my colleagues, because yeah, of course, as professionals we have to work and keep working, but at the same time we're not robots. We are like humans, and we cannot leave our emotions aside, and we still were stressed. We're not sure about our future. We don't see the motivation to work on the cases, and we had to deal with that, and all of my colleagues had to deal with that. So I assume there could be some conflicts between my colleagues, whether with regard to the cases, how they see the case, how they see the analysis of the case, or with judges when they discuss the cases. But yeah, overall, of course, I would say that the like intercommunication inside the unit changed.
And was there any accusation against yourself just for being Russian in this context of the war, or was it clear that you are like a human rights lawyer and that you are not like a representative of the government or something? Did you experience something like that, like any form of change, how people talk to you, worked with you?
Fortunately not. I mean, we felt sorry for Ukrainians, and when we met them in corridors, we couldn't say much, and we didn't, I think, actually, most of us, because it was kind of difficult. But yeah, I mean, I didn't feel that attitude changed towards myself, but I would say that overall, when the war started, the first reaction for some institutions, bodies, and organization was a bit discriminatory against Russians. For example, in France, that's for sure. I think in Germany as well, actually, some, not even some, I think most of the Russians' bank accounts were blocked for some time until they present their papers, their residence cards, their passports, whatever. They blocked everything, and the same happened to us, despite the fact that the Council of Europe and the bank that works with the Council of Europe, they should have known that we are employees of the Council of Europe, and we have our residence cards issued by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of France. But anyway, they just blocked completely like everything. So they decided to go and this like take us collectively as Russians and first block everything and then decide case by case if they should keep it blocked or not. But it was the first reaction. I wouldn't say that it was fair. It was unfair for sure. But afterwards, I didn't see any kind of this, like, I don't know, like how to call it, bad attitude towards us or discriminatory attitude towards us. Yeah, of course we have. I don't know if you've heard, but of course there are some movements and steps taken by the European Union which are not clear-cut fair now. For example, you are not allowed to use to go in a Russian car to enter in the Russian car the Council or the European Union, for example, and they can confiscate your car and confiscate some of your clothes and everything. So, but it's also about politics, sanctions regime, and everything. But overall, I would say that myself, within the Council of Europe and the court, during these times when I worked there and afterwards, I didn't feel any discrimination towards us.
Okay. Let's jump back to the time before 2021. You told us at the beginning you worked in many different countries. You spent a lot of time first in Russia, then US, The Hague, you went to Stockholm, you went to Austria. Now you're based in Strasbourg for a couple of years already. I always feel that you get to know your own culture best when you are confronted with other working cultures. When you work in other countries, when you face colleagues from other cultures, nations, and so on. I would be interested to know what you found out about your own Russian culture during your work abroad. Is there anything that you found out about yourself, about what it means to be a Russian, actually?
Yes. So when I first time went outside Russia, I think it was when I went for a long period. It was my studies in the US, and there, of course, I saw that I'm quite different in a lot of perspectives from the people living there, and even talking about like the usual life, going to supermarkets and chatting there, or seeing people there and everything like that. And of course, I was surprised by how emotional people in the US are, and all of these things. But then when I started studying and everything, of course, I also saw how different the approach was to study international law. But I got used to that very fast, and especially with the help and assistance of my classmates from all over the world, and also was interested in their cultures, and yeah, we really had a lot of classmates from Latin America, from Asia, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and we made new friends. We talked a lot and traveled all together. So there, I think from that point, I wouldn't call myself a person of the world, but then I started understanding that we are different at some point. We are not the same, even maybe approaching some tasks or assignments, but still, even if we're different, we can accept these differences, and they're not actually that important when you interact people and communicate with them. So after that, I just I think I find myself the same as others. So I mean, if I approach, and Russians overall, I think we are also most of the time we're the same. We have our motivation. We have, for example, an assignment. We approach it. We want to make it with a good quality, and we want to learn from others and to get new knowledge and experience. I think it's kind of the same, but what could be different is I don't know if we can call it like the approach to life, or the approach to see things around us. But yeah, I think the past of our countries in which we were born and raised, and then how our parents saw this and how they behaved, so we saw it and could learn from that. I think all of this shapes ourselves, and that could make us different or look similar as our relatives, our parents, generations which were raised, for example, in the USSR. If we are talking about Russians, And when you go outside of your country, of the traditions you're born and raised, you can see different things, and you can adapt to them if you see them as good ones, and you don't see any contradictions with your vision of life. You adapt to them easily and fast, so then you cannot even differentiate. It's just like one culture, one environment for you. It's just how you, I think you can see that all people are kind of the same. It kind of makes everybody equal, I would say. I don't know, at least for me. Here, when I work now, I don't feel that I'm different. At least here in Europe, I would say that yes, I'm Russian. Of course, I'm Russian, but it doesn't make a difference for me when I work with colleagues from France or from Germany. Maybe the difference could be the language we speak, but otherwise approaching tasks, assignments, communicating, interacting, trying to solve our conflicts, possible conflicts. We have more or less the same understanding of that and vision of how we can approach and deal with that.
Mm-hmm. Maybe one last question, because you mentioned the way you were raised and like the special things about being born and raised in Russia. Do you maybe have some examples of that you realized maybe after you left, when you were in the US or in Europe? What are like specific things of your experience of being Russian?
I would say that, for example, I don't know if it's about being Russian, but still, I think it's more about how education in Russia works. When I went to study to the US, and in our LLM program, we had completely different approach to how to learn things and how to see the things. So we didn't just read the stuff from books and discuss it. Our professors, they started a topic and then engaged all of us into discussion, and we used a lot of case law from the regional courts, from the International Court of Justice, and we tried to see, or to make a broad picture of what we are discussing, based on even considering our backgrounds of all of us, considering our maybe cultural visions of that and everything. So it was about, I would say, holistic approach to the problem we were discussing, and it never happened, at least in Kazan, when I studied in my bachelor and master programs, for example. As for life, for example, in the US, I felt at the beginning, I felt that why people are so happy, why they're so emotional, why they're asking us how are you every time. Like, of course, I'm glad to be like friendly and polite, but at least myself, I can escape or avoid this this kind of like emotional things when I interact with a person, and I don't know. Sometimes people say that it's a thing that most of the Russians have, that this this state when people are not emotional, say. But yeah, overall, I felt that strange. But then, of course, I get used to that, even if I cannot do this by myself, like being that happy and friendly with everybody. And sometimes I know that people say that they felt this a bit fake, but it's just the approach. I think also these people were born and raised. So if they are raised in this environment when all of people around are happy and asking how are you and everything like that. So of course they behave the same way, and there is nothing wrong with that. It's just the thing that in the other part of the world people don't do that, and they might feel that weird and strange. But yeah.
Do you now still consider yourself as a Russian or American or French or European, or is it a mix of everything right now?
For sure, I'm a citizen of Russia so far, and I was born and raised in Russia, and this is my country of origin. And I have a lot in myself from the Russian traditions and Russian culture, Russian history, and everything. And I like a lot about that. But yeah, and I like a lot about France and Germany, which is nearby here. But I wouldn't call myself French or German, of course, even if I, for example, know the language they speak. But overall, I would say that, yeah, it's just a mix of everything, right? It's just at some point I like something from France, and I feel that in this way I share this something with French people, something I like about German, and at this point I share this this with the German people, and so on. But most of the time it concerns the countries I lived or worked in. So, like for example, it was Stockholm as well, Swedish people and their culture. So I think more you travel, more you broaden your perspective, more cultures you have inside yourself, and you just become like again, not, I wouldn't say this like a person of the world, but you just become more, I don't know, a person that understands more, that can see things from different perspectives, that can analyze more, that can read more, and interact with people with different cultures, and then come to certain conclusions, for example. So I think it helps. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ruslan, for taking your time today to speak to me. I hope it was interesting for our listeners as well. I wish you all the best for the future, and hope that we meet each other again soon.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.